Welcome to our channel. Today, we're going to take you on a journey to the heart of one of America's most haunting ghost towns, Pitcher, Oklahoma. A town built on the promise of prosperity, only to crumble under the weight of industrial neglect. This is the story of how unchecked mining and environmental disaster led to a community's downfall. Stick around, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button to stay updated on more stories like this. Section 2. The cost of prosperity. Pitcher, Oklahoma, once prospered thanks to its mining industry, which pumped out vast wealth. But behind this economic boom, something far less desirable was left behind. Mining created mountains of waste, known locally as chat. These piles of gravel-like material may have seemed harmless at first glance, but they were made up of toxic heavy metals, especially lead. At first, these waste piles looked like just another part of the landscape. They were often used for construction or playgrounds, and children would play on them, unaware of the risk. Parents didn't think twice, believing their community was safe. But what no one realized at the time was that these piles of chat were silently poisoning everything around them. Fine particles of lead dust began drifting through the air, settling in homes, schools, and backyards. As families lived, worked, and played in this contaminated environment, they unknowingly inhaled dust that carried long-term health risks, especially for young children. Over time, the environmental toll became undeniable. Land and water were poisoned, with streams turning red from the contamination, and vegetation began to wither. The surrounding ecosystem struggled to survive, as animals and plants were affected by the toxic landscape. Abandoned mine shafts dotted the area, creating dangerous sinkholes that could collapse without warning. Slowly, but surely, Pitcher's foundation was crumbling beneath its feet. For years, the toxic hazards in Pitcher were ignored or downplayed by both local and federal authorities. Reports dating back to the 1970s warned about the dangers of the exposed mining waste. The piles were releasing lead, zinc, and other heavy metals into the environment, but local officials reassured the public that Pitcher was safe. This wasn't just an oversight, it was a deliberate choice. A choice to avoid the financial and logistical burden of a full-scale cleanup. Mining was the lifeblood of Pitcher's economy, and acknowledging the dangers would mean confronting massive financial liabilities for both the government and the mining industry. Section 3. The warning signs ignored by the 1970s, Pitcher's once thriving economy had begun to decline. The demand for lead and zinc had decreased, but the environmental toll of decades of mining only worsened. Health warnings became harder to ignore. Some residents noticed unusual symptoms, headaches, developmental issues in children, and unexplained fatigue. Yet, authorities continued to downplay these concerns, unwilling to acknowledge the full extent of the contamination. In the early 1990s, the Indian Health Service conducted blood tests on local children. The results were shocking. 34% of the children tested had dangerously high levels of lead in their blood, levels that posed serious health risks, especially for young children whose bodies are more vulnerable to heavy metals. Lead poisoning can cause developmental delays, learning difficulties, behavioral issues, and long-term health complications. With this alarming evidence, the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, declared Pitcher a Superfund site, marking it as one of the most toxic areas in the country. The EPA began cleanup efforts, but the problem ran deep. Decades of mining had left contamination not only on the surface but miles underground. Containing and cleaning the toxic dust, soil, and water became an almost impossible task. Section 4. The final blow then, in May 2008, another disaster struck Pitcher. A catastrophic EF4 tornado tore through the town, destroying homes, flattening Main Street, and leveling what little remained of the once thriving community. For many residents, this tornado was the final blow. It was the moment they could no longer ignore the grim reality of Pitcher's condition. The community that had once been full of life and hope was now in ruins, dangerous, contaminated, and beyond repair. After the tornado, federal authorities offered a buyout to the residents willing to leave. By 2009, nearly every resident had left, and Pitcher was officially declared uninhabitable. Schools were shut down, the post office closed, and families scattered, forced to leave behind their homes and memories. Pitcher, once built on the promise of prosperity and the American dream, was now a hollow shell, an abandoned ghost town, left to serve as a stark warning of what happens when economic gains are prioritized over environmental responsibility and public health. Section 5. The legacy and lessons today. Pitcher stands as one of America's most haunting ghost towns, but it is far from unique. Across the United States, hundreds of other Superfund sites still exist, each with its own dark legacy of environmental neglect and industrial contamination. Some of these sites have been abandoned, others are undergoing cleanup, but all serve as painful reminders of the risks of unchecked industry. Pitcher's story is not just about the decline of a single town, it is a cautionary tale about the consequences of ignoring environmental warnings. For years, the residents of Pitcher trusted that their community was safe. They believed in the American dream. But the reality of their situation shows how the pursuit of short-term profits can lead to devastating long-term costs. As we look to the future, Pitcher's story forces us to ask hard questions. How many other communities are unknowingly at risk? How many hidden dangers lie beneath our feet? Pitcher stands as a powerful example of the cost of unregulated industry and environmental neglect. It is a story of promises broken and lives changed forever. If this story resonated with you, please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell to stay updated. Let us know in the comments what places or histories you'd like us to explore next. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Let's remember Pitcher, not just as a chapter in history, but as a lesson for the future.